who would have known that the passing of one man would make the country so divided? I used to think it was common sense that when somebody passes away, that individuals would at least have enough respect for that person's family, the loved ones that were left behind. But from what I see and from what I hear, common sense just isn't too common anymore. I recently saw a story to where Erika Kirk, which is the widow of Charlie Kirk, whom passed away nearly 2 weeks ago, has forgiven the individual who basically took out her husband. I just want to give my thoughts as far as how I feel about her making this very, very bold move. You know, this guy took away the father of her children. He took away her husband. And for her to say, I forgive you for what you did to me. I forgive you for ruining my life and for ruining my kid's life and for just really disrupting the flow of the future in which they, I'm sure, plan together. And for Miss Erika Kirk to say, I forgive you, I gotta say that that is a very, very admirable thing to do, especially in this society where it's an eye for an eye, it's a tooth for a tooth, and forgiveness is not something that is practiced. I've heard people say, I don't forgive, and, I don't really care about forgiveness, and that forgiveness is not possible, when in actuality, I've seen people forgive individuals in these type of cases many times. One particular story comes to mind. A number of years ago, a female police officer walks into an apartment in which she believes is hers, and it was the apartment of a gentleman, and she shot him pretty much, and he passed away from his wounds. And I remember the case going to court, and the brother of the deceased actually got up and hugged that police officer and said that, I forgive you. And I've seen people scrutinize him and say all different type of things that were negative, all because he chose to forgive. Let me just say something right quick. God says that if you don't forgive, then you can't be forgiven. And this is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, because this applies to every aspect of your life where somebody may have done you wrong. It doesn't matter what they've said. It doesn't matter what they've done. We have to forgive people, or we won't be forgiven by the Lord, you feel? Now, to some of you out there who may not be Christians, or maybe you don't believe in God, obviously, you probably don't believe that, and you don't condone that or support that either. But we have to remember that Charlie Kirk was a Christian, and his wife, Erika Kirk, is a Christian as well. And following the faith says that forgive those so that you can be forgiven as well. Definitely not an easy thing to do. Just because you forgive doesn't mean that it just goes away. It doesn't mean that, Charlie's going to come back, and it doesn't mean that it changes anything. But what it does do is it gives peace to the person who was offended. And I think that I'm going to drive this home with that point, and exactly. Forgiveness is not for the offender. It is for the victim. It is for the person who is in pain. It is for the person that endured the trauma. Forgiveness is for them so that they can be released, so that they can have peace, because God tells us that if we forgive, peace shall abound upon us, okay? When you don't forgive somebody, you harvest this endless amount of hatred within your heart, and it just stays there and it sits there and it marinates and it eventually makes you very numb and just a very unpleasant person to be around because you have chosen to not forgive and you've chosen to harvest hatred. A lot of things actually happens as well to the human body when you do not forgive. The science is there, the research is there. Just look it up for yourself. How illnesses and unforgiveness are actually related to one another. Just wanted to give some respect to Erika Kirk for being courageous and showing the example of what it means to be Christ-like. Because there's going to be somebody who sees that and says, wow, if she can forgive somebody for taking out her husband, for taking away daddy from her kids, then maybe I can forgive somebody as well who harmed me or who says something mean about me. Maybe I can forgive that person as well. I think it's a great example. And I know some of you are probably going to disagree with what I'm saying right now. You're probably going to think, you know, I'm some fool or whatever, but it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, we all got to answer to God. And if he says, listen, I know that it hurts. I know what they did to you was wrong, but you still have to forgive them because on the other side of forgiveness is peace. On the other side of forgiveness is joy. On the other side of forgiveness is blessing. On the other side of forgiveness is just an abundance of life. But you'll never know that if you're somebody that doesn't forgive people and that always feels you need revenge or an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, when that doesn't change anything at all. It just keeps the cycle of hatred going. But when you forgive, it literally like caps it. It cuts it off. And it's something that you no longer have to carry anymore. So I'm going to end this video on this note, putting the attention on you. Is there somebody who hurt you, who did something to you in the past that you think about every day and you haven't forgiven them yet? This is not to sound insensitive. This is not to belittle anybody's situation, but I do want to encourage you for your sake, not for the offender, to forgive that person who did you wrong. I can promise you there's joy, blessings, and an abundance of just grace for you once you do decide to practice forgiveness.